Hello everyone, and thanks very much for joining me on Dean the Vaping Biker, and today we're going to be looking at the Reload RDA from Reload Vapor USA. It's quite a funky little thing that's been all over Instagram, so you may have seen it if you're an Instagram person. I'm really pleased that they sent this one on because I do think it's a funky little thing. Not perfect, but it's pretty damn sweet. So before we dive down, let me just tell you I did do a one of what I thought was going to be a humorous and fun intro. However, I got a little bit carried away. So it's a bit daft, and I didn't want people to have to wait 1 minute and 17 seconds before we get into the up close just watching me dick around. So I stuck that at the end. If you want to see it, check it out at the end of this video. As for this though, let's have a little toot and then we'll dive down up close. Phone went off. Not a bad little chucker. Right. Let's go down and have a little look, shall we? Come on then. Right, so here we are with the Reload RDA, and I've left it in there, or I've popped it back into this little packaging at the moment. This is how it came to me, and I think this is a really cool little bag to send your gear out into. I think it's just quite a sweet little thing. Don't know if it's leather or pleather, but whatever way, I think it looks cool. Okay, so in here we've got the RDA, which we'll look at in a second, and then underneath here, there we go. We haven't got really a whole bunch of spares to choose from, but we have got an extra post screw and a couple of O-rings in there. Would have been nice to see a little bit more of that, as it would have been nice to have seen a little 510 adapter for the drip tip in there as well. But let's have a little look at the RDA itself. It looks a pretty spiffy little thing. It looks clean. It looks, it's not garish in my opinion. We've got the logo on the front there, but we've not gone bonkers with it. Now, we have got this knurling at the top there, which I think looks kind of funky. But one of the biggest bugbears I have with this is, can you see at the top here? Where you've got that knurling continuing all the way down to that elbow. Now that's a very sharp elbow there, so it just doesn't really feel brilliant against your lips if you go sort of past the drip tip, or it can catch on the old mustache if you've got one. Ladies, possibly not something you have to worry about quite so much. However, what we've got though, I think, looks quite sweet. Now underneath on the 24 karat gold plated deck, we've got the logo in a bit of a metallic-y kind of font going on there. We've got the 1.0 going on there, and the serial number at the bottom. Now, all in all, there's not a great deal to show you more on the outside. The drip tip, as we'll see when I go into the sort of the up top a bit, the drip tip is the same size as a Kennedy. So if you do have a custom tip for a Kennedy, or is it the Goon that's the same size as the Kennedy? Can't remember. I don't think it is. It's something else. Griffin, that's the one. Then if you have got a custom tip, it'll work in here lovely. You've got the O-ring on the inside, so if you do have a friction fit drip tip, that goes in there and it stays in, which is nice. Not the tightest, but certainly not the loosest, and not going to come just falling out. I like that. I think that's worked out rather well. Now, one of the things that I will mention before I take the base off there is these 510 threading here. Now, I imagine it could just be mine, to be honest with you. However, I found them to be not the best finished, to be honest with you. They're quite grindy, and even though I've been using it now since I've had it, I can still feel they're sort of sharp and grindy going on in there, which is not brilliant, to be honest with you. And if I use a bit of kitchen roll, for instance, to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about here, if I use kitchen roll, grab onto it and then twist, it kind of bores its way through everything, because there's kind of bits, there's a bit of kitchen roll stuck in there. Look. It doesn't feel lovely. So it'd be nice to see that 510 thread just finished a little bit better, in my opinion. But that is being really picky. It doesn't interrupt the way it performs in any way, and it's managed to go onto every mod that I've put it on. We do have a protruding 510 there, which I'm very happy about as well. Now then, let's take this top off, and we can get into the deck. The O-rings holding this on, they've got two reasonably thin O-rings, which have meant that it's held on brilliantly. Because I like taking the cap on and off when I'm dripping anyway, I've had a good time with this. Any kind of thicker or more protruding O-rings would make that more of a bitch, but I'm quite like it. Maybe a tad on the loose side for some people, but it works out very, very well for me. Now you'll see in here that we do have a slightly different bit of a deck design, slightly reminiscent of the No Pity that I reviewed a little while ago, although the airflow is a little bit more Kennedy-esque. Now the reason I've left my build in, I very, very rarely do that, but the reason I've left this in there is just to show you one of the builds that I've rocked in here, which is a 3mm ID dual core, 26 gauge dual core N80 with a 36 gauge Clapton over the top. So you've got just a cheeky little fuse Clapton going on there. But what that means is that there has been plenty of space in there for that to happen. Yes, they're a little bit snug in, but 3mm ID with a sort of a reasonably thick coil, I'm more than happy with. I personally like keeping the coil so it's directly over the top of these airflow holes there. So I try not to build too much wider than that. Even though the heat generally comes from the center, I tend to build not a whole hell of a lot wider because I like the space down there for the cotton to go down when you're wicking. All in all, I found that to be the most effective coil that I've used. Now then, let's take these bad boys out so we can really show you what we've got to play with in there. I've not had any issues with actually getting coils in. It's just a slightly different way of getting your coils sorted out. Now, one of the things that I do like on these screw heads I do like the fact that they're the sort of bolt kind of style screw head, if that makes sense. I think that's kind of cool, but I do like also the fact that you've got a really deep Phillips head going on, so your chances of stripping these are pretty minimal, to be honest with you. Now the post holes are kind of higher than they are wider, which is kind of okay, but you know, if you're going to be putting coils in, generally if you're going to be using kind of 2-3 core Claptons or whatever, they're going to be a little bit wider, so it can twist your wire if you do a particularly large coil. However, it's certainly not something that has affected the use for me. On the width wise there, we've got just under 2mm, so I imagine that's my jobbies being a little bit out, to be honest with you there, and just over 2mm on the height of those. Have I measured that right? Yeah, just over. So you know, you've got probably about 0.5mm difference between the width and the height, which, you know, is okay. I'm happy with that, but maybe go a little bit chunkier on the posts so we can have wider holes rather than taller holes next time, or in the Mark II, just as a suggestion to you guys there at Reload Vapor USA. Now, all in all, I really like the build quality. I know I said about the threading on the 510, but otherwise I've had no issues with the threads on the screws or the posts or any of those sort of jobbies. You can see where you've got the separation down below there for your positive section, which means that this here is the positive area, so these two are positive and these two are negative. Obviously you can single coil it, but your airflow is not going to go directly under the middle of the coil. You can single coil just on one side there, for instance, and on the cap you can choose the single coil option, which I think is a nice little addition that the Reload does have. So you can go for that single coil option, get a whole bunch of wick in there, and you'll be good for days. All in all, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a nice little deck. It's 24 karat gold, as I mentioned earlier on. These post holes are a fair old size. Am I going to be able to measure these? Not post holes, air holes. Let me see if I can measure these. Looking at about 3mm each, more or less. So that's in my ropey measurements. That could be a little bit different. So you're looking at, what you're looking at, 3, 6, 12 there, 12mm overall, which is the reason why we've got these nice big gaps here. But like I did say, or like, have I said already, or will I say in the top bit? I can't remember. Anyway, one of the things I will say is this chamber here is quite a deep chamber, as you can see. And what that means is that does that does mean that even when you shut the top down, you do have quite a lot of airflow that needs to go in there, you know. So maybe, I don't know, I don't even know if it's possible, but rather than having the big wide oval going on there, even splitting that in two all the way down, so you've got one for each hole, that may be a nice little nice to have jobby, which could in turn help with a little bit of turbulence that you can experience when you do close this down, because that air chamber, obviously, you know, air doesn't go in a linear fashion, so it is going to kind of get in there and just shuffle around a little bit. Does that make sense? So yeah, it'd be nice possibly to see these split up in the same way that these are, just to help with a little bit of a smoother airflow. But otherwise, I think it's really well made. I've had no issues getting coils in there, and I think it performs pretty well for what it does. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the up close for the Reload RDA, and it does look pretty, doesn't it? There you go. Right, let's go up top and we'll have a chat. Okay, so that was the up close with the Reload RDA. Now, it is a funky little RDA, and I've got to say it's interesting they do the 24mm version as well. I would like to have seen that one, to be honest with you. As far as performance goes, it does what it says on the tin. I mean, at the moment I am rocking dual coil 3mm ID, the ones that were in the start of the up close video. I've recorded it in a funky order again. And it's performing marvelously. They came through at 0.18, and I'm at 55.5 watts on the SCAR 26650 and 18650 mod from Lost Vape. Let's have a little toot. So she is a chucker. She certainly is a chucker. Now, not the quietest, and the reason for that, I think, is the depth of those air holes and the fact that it does cause a little bit of turbulence. It's not the smoothest airflow delivery that I've ever had, I must admit. However, if you're not too fussed about it being a little bit turbulent and a little bit noisy, I'm just putting some juice on, so that's why I'm not looking at you. If you're not fussed about it being a little bit turbulent, a little bit noisy, then it's entirely reasonable. I like the fact that it's a different sort of kind of deck. I also like, let me turn the phone off, I also like that they are trying to do something that's a little bit different. Now, what I'm not overly aware of with this RDA is exactly where they were going with it, in as much as it's not really a full-bore cloud chaser RDA, and at the same time it's not a full-bore flavour chaser. With a similar deck design, we saw the No Pity recently, the No Pity S, that had that kind of similar kind of design when it came to placement of coils over the airflow at the side of the deck. And I don't know if there were others before that. I mean, there quite possibly may have been, but that to me says that it's a flavoury kind of RDA. However, the airflow kind of tells me that it may not be. I would like to have seen an adapter for a regular kind of drip tip, rather than having to put your own ones in there. Actually, let me just check something. Hold you on now for a sec. There is a slim possibility that if you've got a custom Kennedy tip, that may fit. Let me have a little look here. There's my grippy things. Ow. Well, that doesn't want to come off. Hold on a second. Normal service. Well, this is kind of normal service, isn't it, really? Right, let's have a little toot here. Right, the Kennedy, this is from a 22mm Kennedy, competition one, I think. Is this a competition one? I think it's the competition one. Yes, comp one. And that drip tip does fit. It's it's not too bad. It's not too bad. So yeah, if you do have yourself a custom tip that fits a Kennedy 22, then you will be able to use it on this as well. So all in all, I think it's a pretty reasonable RDA. What I don't like is this top edge, where the knurling is right on that top elbow. I'd like to have seen that kind of calm down a little bit. I fed that back to Reload Vapor in the States, and they've said that they may change that on the next run of RDAs, which I think is going to be a nice little move. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, it is quite light. It does feel quite light. You don't have kind of wire builder extraordinaire sort of space in that deck. So this is what I mean about that kind of flavour chaser. I think it's probably trying to go for that kind of midway level. Excuse me. The flavour on it I think is entirely reasonable. Very, very dependent on the type of coil you put in here, how close it is to the airflow, and obviously, you know, how much power and juice and all that sort of good stuff. So the normal sort of rules apply on this one. However, if I have this wide open, oh, hang you on a second, wide open, and let's turn the old wattage up a little bit. Let's take this to 66.6. And it performs, it chucks, it really does. And that is where this does work at its best, I think, with the airflow wide open, because when you do close that off, because you've still got that big chamber in the base of the deck that has to be full of air before it sort of really kind of goes up through the air holes underneath your coils, I think that's what's creating that extra kind of noise and all that sort of stuff. I mean, if I take this down to what I would consider, what's that, maybe kind of a 3, in fact I can measure it. Let's have a little measure here. Yeah, so just over a 3 mil hole a side, which is sort of comparable to some of the other RDAs on the market now. Obviously that's given me a lot more of a warm vape, which in turn is allowing a little bit more flavour to come up in the mouth hole. So all in all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you a really strong kind of yes, you should go and buy it, or no, you shouldn't. But in all honesty, I can't. I really can't, because it depends on if you like the looks. It depends on if you're happy with the build deck on it and all that sort of malarkey. I think this is the first one that I've seen coming from Reload Vapor USA, and I think they've definitely got a very strong future in front of them if they continue developing RDAs like this, and continue to improve. It's certainly been a pleasure to use it, and yeah, I mean, I think it looks great. It does what it says on the tin, and it performs. Just a couple of little tweaks and it would be spot on in my opinion. Anyway, the price that is on anabolicjuice.com at the moment is $69.99 for this one, for the stainless 22, but they do go up to the 24 mil, which is $79.99, although out of stock, so I don't know if they've made those as yet. It does look as though they're going to be coming in 4 colours. So you've got this one, the stainless one, a brass one or a goldy one, like a rose gold sort of affair, and a black one. The black one looks pretty badass, to be honest. I'd definitely like to try the second batch of these, and I'd like to try the 24 mil as well, because I think that the extra little amount of space that you may get on that deck, and hopefully they're going to give a little bit more space between those posts, and I think that's going to work out really, really well for them. So thank you very much, Reload Vapor, for sending this on. This did come direct from the manufacturer, and thank you very much for watching. I've been doing the Vape and Biker. This has been the Reload RDA out of focus. Let's finish on an in focus shot, shall we? And it does look pretty sweet. This has been the Reload Vapor RDA, and it's a beast. Hang about if you want to see the daft video. Have it large! bullets. Gonna have to reload.